such a bad boy. I'm so dangerous. Like, bro. Oh my god, I'm sorry. Not me blushing. Let's talk about the 57 books that I've read so far in 2023. It says here that I'm 76% done with my reading goal of the year. That means I'm ahead by 17 books. And then as far as genres go, I have read 31 romance books this year. So most of the books that I picked up have been in the romance genre. 17 of those have been contemporaries. That is the biggest shocker to me because I used to never pick up contemporary books. I used to only read fantasy. And I've read 15 young adult books, which is not really surprising to me. I tend to pick up a lot of YA. I've only read 14 fantasy books and it's already this far in the year. That's crazy. But anyways, let's get on to the questions. The best book you've read in 2023. I have honestly read some really great books this year. The book that stood out to me the most and is the book that I have just not really stopped thinking about since I read it. It's The Secret History by Donna Tartt. I love this book so much. I still think about Donna Tartt's writing to this day. That is really my favorite part of it, is her prose is just so addictive to me. Next question is, best sequel you've read so far in 2023. If you know me, you probably know it's gonna be the Magnolia Parks books, The Long Way Home and The Great Undoing. Every time I think about these books, every time I talk about these books, it makes me want to scream because I love this series so much. I'm absolute trash for this series. I literally think about these characters every single day, like the psycho that I am, because in my mind and in my heart, these characters are real. These characters feel so real to me that I genuinely feel like they're some of my close friends. I know that sounds psychotic, but if you know, you know. New release you haven't read yet but want to. The first one is actually one of my most anticipated releases of the year, and this book came out in February. Hellbent by Leigh Bardugo. This is the sequel to Ninth House. I can't be the only one who does this. When I'm so excited for a new release or like a book that I just found out about, I tend to want to save it for later. When is later, you ask? I have no fucking clue. Every single time I look at my physical TBR to try to find my next read and I see the books that I'm super excited about, the first thing that I think of is like, the vibes are not right yet. And I just keep on hearing amazing things about it. It just makes me more excited for it. But like, the more excited that I get about this book, the more I want to put it off. Make it make sense. Next is Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. This is her newest release. It just came out May, I believe. My only excuse as to why I have not read this book yet is because I bought it, but I haven't unboxed it because I have been saving my book packages to film a book haul. That is my only excuse. But once I get it opened, it's probably going to be one of the first books that I pick up. This next one is Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. It's a historical fantasy of sorts. The two characters anonymously write letters to each other and then they fall in love. And I also really want to read Emily's Encyclopedia of Fairies. Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. It has a really freaking long title, but that book is also one of my most anticipated releases of the year. That one's about this woman who is a professor of fairies or something like that. Like, she teaches about fairy history and then she goes somewhere to go do more research for this book that she's writing. It sounds cute and whimsical and just everything that I love. Most anticipated release for the second half of the year. I have a lot. I feel like a lot of good books come out in fall and winter. The first one is The Hurricane Wars by Thea Guanzon. This is a fantasy with a Southeast Asian setting. I love that already. And this is the author's debut, and the author is Filipino. So obviously I want to support a Filipino queen. I don't think I've read any fantasy book that has a Southeast Asian setting. I've read a few fantasy books with East Asian settings, but Southeast Asia specifically, like, I've never. I got so excited when I heard about this book. I believe this one's coming out in October. I can't wait. I already pre-ordered it. I believe it has a little enemies to lovers romance. You know how I feel about enemies to lovers. This next book is a little bit out of pocket. It's Unravel by Melissa Cassera. This is the second book in the Lockwood trilogy. The first book came out earlier this year. I really enjoyed it. It gave me a 2010s paranormal romance TV show vibes. You know, Teen Wolf, Vampire Diaries vibe. I don't know. I just ate it up. And then, of course, if you know me, you know how much I love Cassandra Clare. Her new book, Swordcatcher, is going to be coming out in October. This is her first adult fantasy book, and it's going to be her first book book outside of the Shadowhunter series. I genuinely cannot wait. I cannot wait to see what she does with a story that is not a Shadowhunter story, because I love her writing so much, and I love the Shadowhunter series, don't get me wrong, but I've been wanting something different from her, and we're gonna get it. She's actually doing a little tour. She's coming to LA, and I got tickets, which I'm so stoked about, because every single time this woman does a tour, she always has a date in LA, and every single time the LA date is the first to sell out. And then a book that's coming out in August is Never a Hero, which is a sequel to Only a Monster by Vanessa Len. I read Only a Monster last year, not really expecting much of it, but for some reason that story's just really stuck with me. It's this YA fantasy about a family of monsters. They're like time traveling monsters, and the way that they get time is quite interesting, and that book ended on a cliffhanger, and I need to know what happens. And of course, because I am the basic bitch that I am also very excited, drum roll please, for Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros, which is the sequel to Fourth Wing. I too love Fourth Wing, and I want to read more about dragons, and I want more Xaden. Yeah, I don't think I need to explain that one any further. If you've been anywhere near books, you've probably heard of Fourth Wing. Moving on, biggest disappointment. I'm actually very glad to say that I haven't read a lot of bad books this year. I've only had one 1-star and one 2-star so far. The first one I can think of is The Fraud Squad by Kyla Zhao. That was one of my most anticipated releases of the year. That one just didn't quite deliver what it promised, so I was disappointed. I think I ended up giving that book like 2.5 stars. It wasn't like super bad or anything, it just fell flat for me. And then this next book, I didn't really have too high of an expectation going into it, but I wasn't expecting to dislike it as much as I did, because this is my one star of the year, and that's Twisted Love by Anna Huang. I am reading Twisted Gamers right now, which is the second book in this series, and the only reason why I even finished Twisted Love in the first place is because I really wanted to move on to the second book, and I am liking the second book so much more. Like, it's like world difference. Twisted Love was okay, I don't want to be too mean, because I know people love this book. I know people love these characters, but holy shit, was Alex Volkov the goofiest motherfucker I've ever read about. One of the biggest complaints that I've heard about Twisted Love is that Alex Volkov is too toxic. And listen, this is one of my favorite series of all time. So obviously I don't mind toxic books. I don't mind toxic characters. But Alex Volkov was not toxic. Alex Volkov was goofy. He constantly talked about how dangerous he was. He constantly talked about how much of a bad boy he was. But we didn't get to see it until like 80% of the way through the book. From the very beginning, he's like, I'm such a bad boy. I'm such a bad influence. I'm so dangerous for her. Because she's like supposed to be this like innocent little mouse type of character. And he just drones on and on and on and on about how dangerous he is. He does like one thing that was like, ooh, okay, that's a little unhinged, but also like, I get it, which maybe makes me a little bit unhinged, that I get why I get why he did what he did. Like in the situation, it was like not even that bad. I mean, it was bad. I guess what I'm trying to say is it was a lot of telling, not enough showing, and he just ended up sounding so goofy every single time he would say, I'm such a bad boy, I'm so dangerous. Like, bro, okay, I'm so scared. Next question is biggest surprise. Control by Melissa Cassera. This is the first book in that trilogy that I was talking about that reminds me of 2010s type of paranormal romance. I saw one person on Instagram talk about this book, so I ordered it because I am very easily influenced. This book was waiting for me one day when I got home, opened my little package, and I went to go read the first chapter, because sometimes I do that, especially for books that I haven't really heard that much, and I ended up reading half of the book in like an hour. This is just a very addictive book, you know, like it was a very easy read. It was not the best book by any means, but it was just highly entertaining, and I genuinely just did not expect to enjoy this book as much as I did. Pure Nessie by Susanna Clark is also a huge surprise for me. That was one of my 5-star reads in the beginning of the year, and it's a book that I still constantly think about to this day. It's definitely in my top 3 of the year so far. I did not expect that book to impact me in the way that it did. Like, it really stayed with me. And another big shocker for me was Happy Place by Emily Henry. I started off this year without having read any Emily Henry books. By the time that I read Happy Place, I'd already read Beach Read, People We Meet on Vacation, and Book Lovers. I already knew that I liked Emily Henry's writing, but when I first heard about Happy Place, it was honestly the book that I was the least excited about of all of her romance books that she's put out. So I really was not expecting for that book to now be my favorite Emily Henry book. I just genuinely really related to Harriet and even Win. This leads to the next question, which is favorite new author, either new to you or debut. Emily Henry is definitely on the list because, like I said, I started off the year without having read any of her books, and I now get it. I understand the Emily Henry girlies. The only book of hers that I've read that I didn't really love was People We Meet on Vacation, but Beach Read, Book Lovers, and like I said, Happy Place, absolutely loved. The way that she writes is just very readable to me. And another author that really took me by surprise was Lynn Painter. I've only read 2 of her books so far, but I've enjoyed both of them so much. She just does the rom-com so well. And this next author, I don't really know if I can count her as a favorite because I've only read 1 book by her, but it is also my favorite book of the year so far, which was The Secret History, which was written by Donna Tartt. The magic of The Secret History for me was in her prose. I don't know, I can go through all of my annotations in this book and just find beautiful prose that I absolutely love. So I think I'm gonna count Donna Tartt as one of my favorite authors, and I definitely really want to read more of her works. Okay, moving on to the next question, which is newest fictional crush. Julian Hates. I read Magnolia Parks, the first book, last year, and I already liked Julian then, but the way that I genuinely fell in love with this fictional character when I was reading The Long Way Home, he's quite literally one of my favorite book boyfriends ever. I want you to listen to some of the things that this man says. Oh my god, I'm sorry. Not me blushing. This is literally like one of my favorite things that was ever written on this book. She's the goddess in the Botticelli clamshell. Her eyes are the water lilies in Monet's pond. She's the hand of God reaching down to mankind. Clint's kiss is a portrait of us, and I'm gonna steal it. Take it, make it mine, make her mine too. My cheeks hurt from smiling. This man is the Riz god. Julian Hates is the Riz master. I'm gonna shut up now. It's genuinely getting embarrassing how much I care for a literal fictional character. In my heart, he's real. Newest favorite character, I would say Julian Hates, but I'm not gonna do that. So I'm just gonna go for Darna and Taryn from The Fourth Wing. They're probably my favorite characters in this entire series. I love them so much. I mean, I honestly really love Sigale too, but Darna and Taryn just have a special place in my heart. I love that the dragons in this book are actually characters. A book that made you cry. I actually haven't read too many tearjerkers this year, but one of them is for sure When Breath Becomes Air by Paul Kalanithi. This one is a memoir. Paul Kalanithi was a neurosurgeon who was diagnosed, unfortunately, with stage 4 lung cancer on the last year of his residency. And this was a book that he wrote during the time that he was dealing with this illness, specifically the epilogue that his wife wrote, because he unfortunately passed away before he was able to finish the book. And that epilogue just got me sobbing. It was so touching and sad and just, it was gut-wrenching. Yeah, that was a very hard-hitting epilogue. And another book that made me bawl like a baby was actually Happy Place by Emily Henry. The ending of that book just really got me. There's just so many things that Harriet was going through. I just related to her so deeply. She's a neurosurgeon resident. If you don't know, I'm in med school and I actually want to specialize in neurosurgery. A lot of the feelings that she was talking about, it wasn't just specific to neurosurgery. I think you can apply this to a lot of different career paths, especially like really demanding and really time sucky ones. I don't know, whenever she was talking about a lot of the things that, you know, she was going through, it just kind of like brought up a lot of things that I used to really think about. It hit me. On another note, a book that made you happy. Many books that I read this year have made me happy, but this one in particular, Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter. It was such a cute freaking YA romance. I was smiling pretty much the whole time I was reading this book. There's just so many cutesy little moments. West and Liz are just so freaking adorable together. This is probably my favorite YA romance that I have ever read. Ooh, second to the last question. Most beautiful book you've bought this year. The first one is this edition of City of Nightmares by Rebecca Schaeffer. This is from Fairy Loot. Absolutely freaking love the naked hardcover of this. Like, look at that. There's a freaking pterodactyl. The cityscape, everything about it is gorgeous. Art inside is beautiful. Look at this cover. I love this art style in general. It's giving me like lo-fi type of vibe. Look at the gorgeous edges. There's like a silhouette of a pterodactyl in the middle. And I also really enjoyed this book. And then next is this Waterstones edition of Hellbent, mostly because the snake edges. I love snakes so much, and I just love how they look on these edges. I think they're so pretty. This also has like a gorgeous end paper and probably one of my favorite covers, A Song with Silver Flame Like Night. I think the colors are beautiful. The way that some of the scales are foiled, so it just, I don't know, it looks so pretty. Finally, our last question. What books do you need to read by the end of the year? The Long Way Down by Kristen Becca Ritchie. This is the final book in the Calloway Sisters series. I've been reading this series for like 2 years now, and I need to get on with this final book and just finish the series. Well, I still have the epilogue novel after this, but I really want to finish the series this year. I really don't have any excuses to why I haven't picked this book up yet. Next is The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. Actually, I want to read this entire series if possible before the end of the year, but let's not be too ambitious. Let's start with just The Poppy War. Next is a book that I need to read this before the end of the year, but I know that the longer that I put this book off, the more it's going to intimidate me. That is A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. This book scares me for many reasons. Number one being, look at this freaking cover. Like, it's literally a man in pain. I feel like this is one of those books that I just need to rip it off like a band-aid and just read it. I'm just so intrigued to see how I feel about this book because of all the things that I've heard about it. I have an entire series in front of me, The Last Hours trilogy. I really wanted to finish my reread of The Infernal Devices before I started this series, and I just finished Clockwork Princess, so I'll probably be starting the series very soon, and I'm so freaking excited. I've already mentioned how much I love Cassandra Clare and how much I love the Shadowhunters world. We have Chain of Gold, the first book, Chain of Iron, the second book, Chain of Thorns, the final book. There you go. That is the mid-year book freakout tag. Those are my highlights of the 57 books that I've read thus far. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you guys in the next one. Toodles!